Greetings, sir and sirettes, and welcome back to From the Depths with me, Elathrix, and of course, welcome back to the adventure mode where today we're hopefully going to get ourselves into space. Now, we do have a little bit more resource than I originally thought we was going to have at this point, so what I'm trying to look for is a blue portal. Once we go through the blue portal, it means our difficulty is going to spike, but we do go into a lovely void for a while where there are no enemies and we can build in peace, because getting to space is going to be really annoying. And honestly, I don't want to try and do that when there are enemies spawning in around me, because that would be an absolute nightmare. Now, after a lot of thinking, I've decided how we're going to do the whole space thing, because I've also read a lot of the comments, is we're going to try and stay as plane-like as possible. My original thought was building just a spacecraft, so a space battleship or something, don't really know, but instead we're going to try and stick with the plane aesthetic, even with wings still, except for with ion thrusters and with a load of advanced controls, just to make sure we can control ourselves in space and in the atmosphere, and we can transition between the two nice and easily. And I think I figured out how I'm going to do that using just really basic stuff, because I'm a basic kind of person, and basic controls make me basically pretty darn happy. So I'll be right back once we found a blue portal, and we can do a nice difficulty jump. Well, it isn't a blue portal, but at least it's some resource. And we can also take off quite easily from the water, so we're going to land here. And hopefully this has a lot of resources in it, because we've been using a lot just for travel. Our engines are woefully inefficient, and honestly, thrusters aren't the most efficient thing either. So between the two, well, jet engines I should say, so between the two, we're burning a lot of fuel. What I really need to do is have some RTGs just for a small engine reserve, just so when we're moving from place to place and not really in combat, we can just burn the energy being produced. At the moment, we're constantly burning fuel, and that's costing us a fortune. Well, not a fortune, but I mean, I like shiny things, and it's burning away the shiny things. Well, it was a good resource zone, at least. Let's turn down the main drive, be a bit more efficient, and once again on the lookout for any blue portals. At this point, any portals? There's red ones really far back, but that's it. Well, we found a friend. Can hardly see it 'cause of darkness, but still. Okay, the missiles are hit. There's a lot of block confetti. We could try and jump on this thing. We're going to be able to get above it quite easily, I think. Though he's firing at something else, which is concerning. Oh, the steam works. I know what you are. That'd be a whole host of resources if we landed on this. That is why I've kept this front section open at the moment. It's a lot more difficult to land on things when you're in a plane, to be honest. Oh, this could be so stupid. But I want to see if I can knock out your AI. Ooh, cramshell. Well, I have no idea where the Steamworks AI is, so let's hope we can hit it eventually. I mean, I'd say it's probably back here, if I had to guess, but I do not know. Well, we did manage to get it, apparently. Problem is, I'm going to have to try and find my chair before I die. And I'm healing. Oh, well, I actually landed on it. There we go. So, amazingly, we've captured our first vehicle. I didn't even have to do the whole chair warp thing. Let's add a quick heartstone to the scrap work so we can see what we're dealing with.
Listening.
Yeah, there wasn't really anything. There's no chance I was going to save that thing and keep it as a minion or anything, so there we are. I feel a little bit cheesy about that, but here's the thing, that's going to be like the last time we get to capture a vehicle in this run, because we're going to be in space. And in space, it's very difficult to capture things. Which way was I going? I think I was going like east? I think? Well, I'll figure it out by looking at the footage, then I'll continue going that way. The game just keeps on tempting me. There's 3 resource zones here. There's an easy to capture Snapjaw over there. There's loads of small enemies which can't fight me because I'm in the air. I just want to find a blue portal now. I already feel bad about capturing a vehicle and using the chair warp. I don't want any more. That was the last chance to capture a vehicle, I thought. So I thought I'd take it for the fun of it. But now it's just... Where are the portals? Call me crazy, but I don't think this ship is meant to do that. I'm just going to ignore that and continue slowly going east and glitching out until we eventually find a blue portal. At this rate, I am tempted just to go through a couple of reds. It will give us a very limited amount of time to build up the craft, but I am starting to get a little bit bored now. It has been like 40 minutes. I've had like one fight, I've harvested resource zones, and I've just slowly cruised along like this because it's nice and fuel efficient. Okay, I just can't find a blue portal. I've been looking now for an hour, so what we're going to do is we're going to go up the difficulty and see if we can find a blue portal there instead. Since now we're more east, and apparently more east has more interesting portals, and I take that as blue portals. So we're going to hopefully increase our difficulty by 1 red and 1 blue, which will be quite a jump from where we are currently. Okay, apparently I was under attack when I just went through the blue portal finally. But here we are, yeah, we've gone through the blue portal, so now we are in this mode, which means we can now build in peace, which means I feel fine going to the designer mode to build, because that is pretty much what I'm doing here, just I can't use the control lock to hold the craft in place, which is really irritating. So rather than be irritated, I'll be right back in the designer mode. I'm going to save this design and bring it forward. And then we've got 180,000 resources to play with, plus the 47,000 the craft currently costs. So, I'll be right back with, hopefully, a start to a new design. It's always satisfying removing something like a whole chunk, like the wings. So what we need to do is drastically extend, or at least make a bit wider, the main body, just because right now I can't fit any decent engines in or anything else, and if I'm going to use any weapons which rely on any energy whatsoever, I'm going to need much bigger engines. It's kind of a shame actually, but I think I'm going to have to remove most of the craft. The space inside currently is just absolutely full, which is not really what I want. I do want to keep the overall shape though, since I do the whole dragonfly kind of style, but it may almost be easier just building from scratch in the same style. There's going to be such a drastic change. I was thinking that my first retrofit would be a lot smaller than this, but we just have so much resource, and we've jumped now to, I think, difficulty 25 or 20 from difficulty 0, so yeah, we're going to need quite a drastic overhaul. This thing's a mess. Maybe it would be better just to go from scratch. I don't like doing that, so I think we'll have to make sure that the new design at least has a lot of space we can upgrade from, so that we don't have to do this again, because I really don't like just starting from scratch. Especially in adventure mode, I like the idea of constantly upgrading, so I'll try and push that a lot more after this design. Still going to stick with lightweight though. So have this as the top section, just to have a rough idea how we're going to do this. So, tail goes there, then maybe make the tail a bit less pronounced. About there-ish, maybe. The body like that, then wings. Well, the wings are still going to be huge, but we could have armoured wings instead, so maybe have them inside the body, just extend the body a bit unnaturally and sharply. Yeah, normally this is the stuff I do off camera, always like basic planning things. Yeah, maybe something like that. Then we have the ion thrusters in the middle, since we are going to use ion thrusters for all of our propulsion now, since they can work in space and underwater and everything else. Not that we're going underwater, but just they work everywhere is the point I'm trying to make. Okay, let's just work off that then. Well, it's going to look a lot less bug-like, but it's going to have loads of internal space. I'm still just working on the basic outline here. I know that this kind of style doesn't gel with quite a few people, but I do like having overhangs like this, which are purposefully not quite fitting. I just think it looks kind of cool, personally. By overhangs, I meant to say angles. By angles, I meant to say corners. And by corners, who knows? That might have been what I was after. Yeah, loads of internal space. So I'm thinking is that to begin with, for our main weapon, what we could do is an advanced cannon, similar to one I used a long time ago in one of the previous adventure modes, which is just a 1mm advanced cannon, so using this type of autoloader. It's a railgun, and it's using 250mm rounds. So it fires decently quickly, but not absurdly quickly, with basically just firing a payload of explosive rounds, just all shoved together. Explosive warheads. Is that the most efficient shell type in the world? No, not even close. Arguably not efficient in the slightest, but it's one I really enjoy using. Go in, go along here, and we have like heavy armor plating all along the tail, just to protect it since it'll be so thin. Then at the back, mostly just for turning, honestly, nothing else. Yeah, the back's just going to be used for pitch and turning. Having it so far away from the center of mass is going to make it quite efficient at that. Then all of the forward thrust I'm going to shove into the wings. The wings are also going to have actual wings inside. They do work even if they're not actually outside, which is fine. And that'll make flying when we go back into the atmosphere a lot easier and need a bit less engine power, since the ion thrusters use a lot of engine power. Oh, actually, do they use less? Okay, they use less than the jet engines, but they also provide way, way less. Yeah, so it's like double the power with the jet engine, but, well, way more than double the max force. So we're not going to get all that much force out of the ion thrusters, so we need the wings and everything. Plus, again, I do want to keep it acting like a plane, is the idea. It's quite a chunky boy at the moment. Maybe something like this? Again, I'm trying to figure out ways where I can expand easily in the future, so some of the areas are going to look a little bit unfinished. But I think this will be okay. It has plenty of flat surfaces for the ion thrusters. There's no, like, custom jet version of Ion, is there? I think that the Dedi Blades work in space, because they're Dedi Blades, and apparently they should be used for everything. But I don't think any of the jets work in space. They don't, right? Certain they don't. I might be wrong. Anyway, yeah, so the ends of these wings are going to look a little bit off, but that's because now I can extend the wings quite easily. I'm going to bring them down, of course. Well, obviously, I'm bringing down everything. Right now, it's just a 2D model. And I'm definitely going to be changing the color scheme as well. Right now, it looks a bit too Dennis the Menace, and that's not really what I'm going for. Maybe some purples and blues. Some reds with that. Ooh, I've never really mixed red and purple and blue. That could work. So a super quick test right now, if I change the pitch by pressing 6, it'll change it and then it'll lock into the new position. Then if I want to non-permanently change the pitch, I just press the original controls, that'll turn off the lock. If I let go, the lock re-engages. Okay, that's all I wanted. So we are still manually controlling the altitude of this thing by controlling its pitch, because it is still a plane. It has tiny little wings hidden inside at the moment, and of course far bigger wings later. So I want to see how much faster this thing will go once it hits space. Of course, again, nowhere near done, and by the looks of things, I'm probably going to want to use Dedi Blades because this is very slow, and it's like a fifth of the weight it's going to be. So I can't remember where space is anymore. Yes, I know space is up, but I can't remember the altitude of space. So I'm just going to slowly get into space. Okay, a little bit faster get into space. Okay, so a little bit of annoyance, but not really a big deal. It's just a matter of, yeah, it seems like no matter how high you go now, you can't just completely float for free. It's fine, because still being in space, the big benefit I get is way more efficient travel. I can go far faster in this thing with less thrust, but yeah, it seems like I'm always going to have to be pointing slightly upwards in order to maintain altitude. We no longer are basically orbiting. Well, lesson learned. I am still amazed by how powerful wings can be, just basic wings. 15% drive, currently just going off the small RTG chunk I've got at the back, and yeah, we are completely gaining altitude, well, up until the point I've just lost my roll control, because once again I have no roll control currently installed. But that's pretty impressive. I mean, it keeps me completely aloft very easily. And that means when we're out of space, we don't need that much energy to fight and just actually stay in combat. But when we're in space, we can then let loose all the engines and go at full speed, which currently is about 100 meters per second. Okay, time to start bulking up the top of this, building up the AI, and then I can build up the wings and the body, and then decide on weapons. I saw a lot of people suggest basically bombs, because missiles can last a long time. You can build up some super missiles using the large and huge, and drop them on very slow targets, but I am going to try and avoid missiles as best I can from here on out. That's not to say I won't use missiles at all, because I love missiles, and anti-missile missiles are going to be really handy, but I don't want them to be my main weapon again, because the last playthrough was a submarine run, which obviously was very, very heavy with the missiles. Just put down to the prefab guns, just have a look, see how this would kind of look, and I kind of like it. Obviously a lot more forward. Remove some of the wings from the core here, put the advanced cannon there. Both would be railguns. And that would work out pretty well. The fact that they're actually turrets would mean I can fire anywhere, and railguns with their speed to the shell means we're going to be able to hit pretty much anything, even at much higher altitudes, while still giving us a pretty decent general purpose weapon. Though I am tempted by perhaps more rapid fire versions. I do prefer them in general, honestly. Not too sure. We'll see. Also, I'm pointing this far down because currently this is how much lift we're getting. It's just about keeping us stable altitude-wise. Okay, now before you judge me, I get very distracted, but I have good reason. I don't have enough brain cells to think of multiple things at once, so I ended up building the front of a space battleship or a space cruiser for the future, because space. Maybe this is what the plane will turn into one day. Back to the plane, that's all. It's looking weirder and weirder every second, and until I have the tail sorted and make it so it's not so two-dimensional, it's gonna continue to look weird. So I'm continuing to try and think about building in the future right now, more so than what I'm building right now. So I've added lots of extra armor on the outside, which I can connect into proper layers of armor without making it all look weak at the center. I can extend the wing quite easily, with this bit still looking quite nice and chunky, and giving me space to extend the main body. It looks very blocky right now because of that, but I kind of dig the style, honestly. It's really weird, and I just love the chaos of it, you know? I can't for the life of me decide on a paint scheme. I have gone to things like this, which are a lot more down to earth, with a lot more muted tones, and looking a bit more kind of like desert military, honestly, which is a bit weird for spacecraft, admittedly. I've gone to the extreme of going full-on Slanesh Emperor's Children style, which is, yeah, one of the legions in Warhammer 40k, all about excess and everything, so we'd have to have loads of bright colours, change these highlights so even brighter, which I think actually kind of works, to be honest, but representing Slanesh is a bit weird, you know, the old Prince of Pleasure, the old She Who Thirsts, He Who Hungers, all that good stuff, so maybe not that, but yeah, I don't know, I kind of do like this, I just don't think it fits the whole space plane style, and I've gone for more of a blue as well, and I've kind of like that, but I'm not too sure about it, so a bit more bright like that. I mean, that's pretty cool, right? And then change the highlights to something else, because, yeah, it's a bit too contrasty. It looks a bit too toy-like, honestly, for me. So yeah, lots of different colour ideas. I'm not sure which. For now, I think I might go with the weird kind of like desert combat look, but any suggestions, very welcome, because I don't know. Every single one I find problems with. Of them, my usual red and black, but I build everything red and black, so I thought maybe, oh, I know, I should try and change things up, but then suddenly I'm out of my comfort zone and everything is screaming at me. Oh, they went straight through. Okay, so that is a pretty cheapo 200mm railgun, just ×2. And I'm trying to decide whether to go with that, a lower gauge, a higher gauge, and whether to upgrade this gun so the gun runs through the wing, or have an entirely separate gun there and there. What I'm thinking is maybe 2 minigun styles on the tips of the wing, and then keep these in the center. I think that's probably what I'm going to go with. Because that's okay. That's going to cause some serious damage, especially in the difficulty we're in currently. And we still have plenty of space to add some particle cannons, stuff like in the future. And of course, we can extend the body and everything else. But for our little first weapon, so we can start hunting down other vehicles, I think that'll do. Plus, railguns, those make me happy. Such a satisfying noise. Okay, so I am now starting to get to the point where I need to stop, because although we do have a lot of resources I can still spend, I need to make sure I have a good pool of resources for ammunition, for fuel, for repairs, otherwise we're going to end up dying really quick. So now I just need to encase this whole thing with armor, and then we're going back into the adventure mode. Honestly, I think it looks weird, and I like it, even though the back kind of looks like its own creature. Because that's always good. Okay, that is an absurdly satisfying gun. Okay, so some final checks then before we get back into the adventure mode. So first of all, I didn't realize until just now how much this looks like bone, which I kind of love, and we're about to be about 50,000 resources less than we actually have available. A few chunks are obviously not quite finished, but that's kind of the point. The wing here, for instance, the belly's a bit flat, but we can definitely expand this. There's loads of space left in here. This was almost unused in the end. The wing is pretty much hollow, by wing I meant to say tail. The back section's mostly for looks. We can easily expand and absorb these first few sections of almost like vertebrae, and then extend the wing outwards, so we can easily upgrade it. Also, the weapons can be just more expensive, so we don't necessarily have to get bigger, because we can just afford more stuff. The one thing I really like about this, let's see how fast we can go. Yeah, it's about this fast before we start running out of energy, so this is purely off the RTG. This costs 0 resources. But now, I want to go to space and see how fast we can go. It's going to face directly upwards because we can, which is going to look really weird. And yeah, and that's without turning on any more of our engines. If we do turn on all the engines though, there we go, we can speed up and that'll start costing us fuel. Let's get to about 3,000, then I'll level up. Wow. I meant to level off there, but still. Does not take long to get to space in this thing. Leveling up a little bit early. Oof. Kind of merging all the words there. Leveling oof. It's a little bit weird transitioning from the atmosphere to space, because of course now the wings aren't providing lift, at least they really shouldn't be. Yeah, although it says lift there, it's not actually increasing our lift, so obviously right now we are just falling down. So if we want to stay at a certain altitude in the vacuum of space, we have got to tip up quite a lot. Which I don't like that much, but I don't really want to go into hover controls. I mean, we could have some hover thrusters purely for when we're in space. I don't know if I like that, though, so comments about that are very welcome. But there's our spacecraft. I mean, there we are, taking up 0 resources. We're in space, moving at 92 meters per second. And as soon as we find combat, we can break our orbit, go straight back into the atmosphere, and then we have our railguns ready to hopefully get us some kills. I think this is going to be a stupidly fun thing to use. If nothing else, it's going to be really enjoyable. Next weapons then, I think just more railguns of different types would be nice. Some light anti-aircraft stuff, some anti-missile stuff would be great. There's a lot of stuff I want to add still. I wonder what the best altitude would be then, just for sheer speed. I mean, for getting away from a target, clearly just going into space as fast as possible. Whoa, we just hit the atmosphere then, that was pretty cool. But yeah, to avoid enemy targets, if we're being chased, just jump into space as fast as I can, and then just keep going. The further away we are, the better. And most enemies won't be able to follow. Now, in the future, I would also like to add, and I never add this, and it's kind of why I want to add it, the warp capability. I mean, it just fits, right? I think that's kind of like an end game thing here, but I really want this thing to be able to warp forward. So there's our space plane, pretty much ready to go into combat. I've got to be honest, I love how this thing's turned out. So I wanted to see if this thing could act like a sub, and it kind of can, but it's really difficult. The main problem is it's made of light alloy, which is really buoyant, so the water actively just throws us back up into the air. So, I mean, that's a good thing, really. At least that means that we haven't accidentally made a true hybrid again. I want to do one more test of the weapons, and then we're back in the adventure mode. This has took me all day, by the way. So here's my thought process. Rather than firing our weapon as we currently are, instead what we could do is just fire everything we can at once. This means our Alpha Strike will be devastating, though the shells are going to be less accurate because we're going to run out of recoil suppression and everything else. But it does mean that if we hit with just a lot of the shells... Yep, that went straight through, 242,000 damage. And it carved a big old chunk into the target, so that could easily disable a medium target in one shot, even with these pretty terrible railguns we have currently. Yep, 2 goes and it's dead. Actually, that's a little bit more effective than I thought, to be perfectly honest. So that's one idea we have. I'm very happy to say, I think I'm done. It's currently called the Fly. I'm going to be changing it to the Dragonfly. It still has a lot of stuff I need to do. Obviously, some of the areas aren't quite as rounded off as I wanted, but it's been such a long time building this, and we do need to have some spare resources. I can upgrade this now very easily. There's loads of spaces on the wings, and actually inside the wings is mostly hollow. There's a lot of work we can do, which means we don't have to go back to this mode for quite a while. We can now focus more on combat. So I'll be right back in the adventure mode when I retrofit into this. It's kind of weird because I've done a bit of a dum-dum with my painting, and I've just overridden the old fleet paint scheme, so now all of my craft are going with the weird kind of bone look. Either way, time for some conversion work, and what I'm going to do first, before I start retrofitting, is what I always do, which is new blueprint. We have a vehicle, and on this vehicle, all we're going to have is a nice bit of resource storage, because we're about to get loads up in the air, and then miscellaneous, and loads upon loads of repair tentacles. This means we can retrofit like so much faster. If it doesn't keep spinning around, so I end up deleting everything. Good enough. Also need to remember to actually add a heartstone to this block, because we're going to have to stay on it to try and stay alive. Oh, we're getting pushed around a bit. Well, the healing cube is doing its work. The fly is becoming the dragonfly. The natural order of things. A few people on Twitter have now pointed out that this craft looks a bit tyranny because of the whole bone structure on the outside. So apparently we are instead representing Tyranids today, and I'm completely okay with that, since that was the first army I ever had. No, that's a lie. The first army I ever had was Blood Ravens. It was Loyalist Space Marines. I was so young and so naive, and didn't understand the fun that is being the villain. Good guys which are misunderstood. Anyway, we're going through the red portal, gonna hopefully try and find a fight, and then I can finally get some sleep. So I'm giving myself half an hour now to find a fight. If not, well, next time will be all combat, so we need to get some serious resources before we do any other upgrades. I want to add particle cannons like to the front of this thing. I want to add a secondary set of railguns, pretty much identical to the first, or perhaps slightly lower gauge for more rapid fire. But I just want to see if this idea is effective. Just that little spray of shots. I've definitely done that before in previous runs like this, but never with this particular gauge and not with such small railguns. Normally a bit more chunky. Also, my Twitter is in my description of every single video in case you want to follow me there. I post pictures of pets a lot and generally gaming stuff. Yeah, updates. There we are, very slowly gaining altitude. Mostly going forwards here at 97 meters per second, and I'm not spending any materials, although I should slow down slightly, just because I'm losing power. Oh, I was speeding up then. That was explaining that. So, it seems like altitude is different in the vehicle spawner, because, yeah, I'm in space now, I've turned off all my thrust, and I'm just kind of floating. Which is good for us. It also means that balancing it's going to be a lot easier, since it's basically just try and get to around 0 pitch. That's something I need to point out earlier on in the video, I guess. Okay, so I've already skipped ahead a bit here, because this is the first fight, and I've been watching these poor little things. We're versus the Buccaneer. The problem is the Buccaneer uses a swarm to attack. The swarm uses cram bombs, and, well, they can't get high enough to do that to me, and that means they're occasionally dying because they're trying to go too high up into space. Yeah. So I've just been doing some test firing and testing out different settings, and yeah, I think I've got to the point I like. Lovely. I'm just going to leave these guys alone. They're probably just going to end themselves as they follow me, so back to trying to find another fight. One thing I have noticed is I definitely need the fuel engine to start feeding my batteries once I get to a certain point, because I am running out of power too fast. Now that I'm spending so much on the railguns, it is like 6,000 energy per shot, and we're firing a lot of shots. Okay, done. If we go below 20% battery, the fuel engine will now start feeding the battery. And if we go above 20% battery power, then the fuel engine will turn back off and just allow the RTGs to slowly and steadily refuel the battery itself. This means that in combat we have consistent energy to actually use our weapons, and outside of combat we'll just use the free RTGs to charge back up. Also, space is chill. However, we are under attack. I do one test and I instantly get attacked. And who are you? Wait, we're in difficulty 30? Why are you here? Well, we're under attack from a tiny little thing. Just added some more rail charges as well, so as long as we have energy, the weapons will still fire. It's just that reload phase. Oh, we just need bigger weapons, honestly. It's just, yeah, definitely light weaponry. I always end up going for armor and overall size of the craft over the weapons to begin with. I don't know why I do this, but I do it all the time. Check out that cannon. Yeah, that's that gun. Well, 2 pretty easy fights in the higher difficulty. It's kind of surprising, honestly. And look, now I can move backwards and keep firing. We can move backwards very, very slowly. Slowly taking out these things. Occasionally they just die because they get too high up, but yeah, they're getting a bit irritating now because I'm constantly seeing all the red marks on my radar. I don't think they're even worth the ammo I'm using, and my god, can I not hit them easily.